evening, chaps. My name's Peter Fisher. I'm a freelance web and mobile applications developer, the host of the How to Code Well YouTube channel, and the author of Docker in Motion, which you can grab from those QR codes there. I'm also pretty nervous. Right, so today I'm going to talk about how to put your Docker image on a diet, how we can actually slim it down, the file size. But why? What's the point? What is the point in having a small Docker image? Well, two reasons really. The first is speed of deployment. The smaller the Docker image, the easier it is to deploy. And there is potentially, I should have put air quotes in this, a cost benefit. The smaller the smaller the image, perhaps if you're using a service where you're being charged for what you use, how much you use it, and so forth, then there might be a cost benefit of having a small image. So Docker is not just about containers. Usually the second word that comes out of after Docker is containers. Apart from all the other Docker objects that you've got, a Docker container is merely just an instance of a running Docker image. And a Docker image is constructed and created by a Docker file, which is what we're going to be focusing our attention on shortly. Now, this I've taken from the Docker in Motion course that I've done, and I've sped it up. But essentially what I'm describing here is that the Docker image is a bit like an onion. It's got several layers. These layers are created by the instructions of your Docker file. Based off of you could have different types of layers, and those different layers, depending on the type, they might make the image bigger or smaller. For example, the labels, the environment variables, and so forth, all the meta-based layers or instructions, they hardly take any room at all. But the run instructions and the copy instructions and the add instructions, they can actually take quite a lot. So what I've done is I've constructed 6 examples. Each example is on GitHub and on the Docker Hub. What we're doing is we're creating a very, very simple web server with Apache 2, and that is just going to have a very basic Symfony installation. So one of those sort of like welcome to Symfony pages. The first example is 593 megabytes. Tag 0.1.0. As we can see here, we have all of these instructions. Each of these instructions therefore generate the layers and the intermediate images and so forth. Here we've got a lovely little cluster of 6 run instructions, and what we can do is reduce those instructions into a single instruction. And in doing so, we're removing all these, well, there'll be 5 removals there of steps, of layers. Therefore, we're condensing down the image. So in tag 0.2.0, what we're doing here is we're condensing this down into one single run instruction. And we're using the double ampersand symbols and the / to denote that we want to chain the instructions together. The / just means that we are running on the next line down. So we've now turned our 6 instructions down into one. We've reduced it down to 588 megabytes. I know that's not a huge deal, but this is just an example that just the tweaks and the manipulation of a Docker file can actually shave some bits, the file size down. And of course, if you have lots and lots and lots of these instructions, then your reduction will be even more. There's other benefits to doing this, but I shan't be talking about them in this talk because I don't have enough time. But there's other benefits in having that for like speed and so forth. Okay, so 2 points I want to focus on in this slide is what we're actually installing. So I'm going to pick on Git. And Git is what I term a build package. A build package basically means, in my eyes, a package that you need in order to install another package or another dependency. So for example, if you were using Composer, you would need to have Git to get all the dependencies. But once you've got those dependencies, there is no need to have Git on your production box. You're not going to jump onto your production box and install other applications, right? That's not what we do, right? We spin up another image and we push that. The other one that I'm going to focus on is PHP 7.0. For those in the back, if I can just sort of highlight this, PHP 7.0 here. What we're doing is we've got, woo, woo. What we're doing is we're using asterisk, and an asterisk is not very good when we're installing things, because essentially what we're doing is we're installing all of the things. We don't want to do that. We don't want to install every single PHP 7.0 package, because A, we're not going to know what we've installed, and B, we're probably not going to use all the things that we've installed. And the whole point of this talk is to narrow down, hone down what it is that we're actually installing and reducing the size of the image. So asterisks in run instructions when they're installing things should give you nightmares. And what we've done in tag 0.3.0 is we've reduced it down to 314 megabytes by only installing the necessary PHP packages that we've got, or what we need. And I've also removed Git because there isn't a need for that in this application. So this is a bit of a bigger leap, but we can certainly do better. Okay, so you might think from this small little section that we've got everything that we need, and there is nothing that we've got on the package that we don't need. Well, that's not really true, because there's quite a lot of stuff in here that we don't need, that has been installed automatically. So, for example, when we do the apt-get update, what we're doing is we're generating a load of package cache for our apt sources. We're also installing a load of scaffolding libraries to help the installer actually install the stuff, and they're actually stored as well as their config, and there's no point in that. So what we can do is clean up after ourselves. You might think that what we've done here is installed everything we need, but in fact the room is actually quite a mess. We need to clean it up. So what we're going to do in tag 0.4.0 is use this here, which removes what we don't need. So what we're doing is apt-get auto remove. We're purging all the configuration, and then we're doing a recursive and forcibly removal of everything in var lib apt lists, which is all of our package sources. We don't need any of that anymore. And we've got it down to 275 megabytes. So yeah, it's all right. We can still do a bit better. So what I'm going to focus on now is our base image. Lots of people, when they go, oh, I've got to change the size of the image, they go, right, let's focus on the base image first. Well, I've actually done it sort of close to the back here. The base image in this case is Ubuntu latest. Now, please don't think that the latest tag of anything in Docker is the latest and greatest. It's not. It's just the default tag. That is such a big misconception. It's just you don't actually have to have the latest tag. But anyway, that's by the by. So we're using Ubuntu latest, and for a web server, that's a bit like using, I don't know, Windows XP to load a notepad file. It's huge. There's no need. So what we can do is we can change the base image, reduce it, use a smaller base image. This is where you can do a little bit of clever work. You could actually construct your own base image from nothing and then start compiling things in. I'm not going to show you that here. But just by changing it to Debian stretch, we've got it down to 262. Not a huge jump, but still it's going in the right direction. So the whole point here is to look at what else you've installed. You might think, oh, I've only just installed that, but actually your from instruction installs so much more. Okay, so next one. Got to try and remember what that was. So, oh yes, so tag 0.6.0 is nothing to do with the Docker file. It's actually to do with the ignore file. So the ignore file, the .docker ignore file, is a bit like the git ignore file in the sense that with the git ignore file, you're ignoring things from the repository. Here, you're ignoring things from the build context of Docker. And you can be very clever with this. You can hide lots and lots of things for lots and lots of different reasons. So here, for example, we are this command here. This please give me feedback, thanks. That there is the build context. That there is the build context. We're saying, right, take the whole thing as the context and build the whole thing. And that will include everything in that current working directory. And that's not a good thing, because they could have some sensitive information in there. So, for instance, we're removing sessions. We're also doing some clever things with this Symfony app. We're actually removing the app_dev file, just in case anyone accidentally allows people into the development environment on production. We're also removing the requirements stuff here, and also the build. Yes, this bit here. So imagine this has gone through a pipeline. We're now pushing it to production. Before that happened, we might have done we should have done some tests. We all do tests. And those tests may have produced some code coverage. They may have produced some statistical analysis on the code. We certainly do not want that in production, just in case anyone accidentally lands on it. That's not good. So removing that. So this is basically a glob pattern. And here I'm also removing all the markdown files. Here I'm also removing all the tests from the vendor directory, because you would assume that when it's on production, it's already been tested. So there's no need for tests. And yeah, so that's 0.6.0. It's 252 megabytes. Really annoyed by the fact I couldn't get it under 250, but hey ho. So in the last 6 iterations, we've managed to go 50% smaller. It started at 593, now we're down to 252. And the point I want to make from this slide is that you have to see this as an iterative step. So don't go, oh, we need to make everything smaller, let's just remove everything and all of that stuff. See it as different stages. So, we're going to take this out and then we're going to change that. Otherwise, if you change everything all at once, it probably won't work. So thank you ever so much. If you've got any questions, do let me know. And also, please give me feedback. This is my first ever talk in front of you guys. I usually do a talk in front of a lens. So all feedback is much appreciated. Does anybody have any questions? The pen thing, yeah. Yeah, so that, and there's also, if I double tap, that. Yeah.
You didn't mention Alpine.
Alpine?
Yes.
No.
No, it's so good. we took, our images now are tiny thanks to Alpine Linux, because it's such a minimal distro.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
I should have used Alpine instead of Stretch.
Oh, if you'd done that, it would have been tiny. It would have been small. Makes images like 6 megabytes. Yeah.
Oh wow. Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh right.
It's well worth it.
Right, there are consequences, so Alpine has a different libc.
That's true. Muscle, isn't it?
So you have to be careful if you're going to use Alpine, why you're using it. To work as better.
Right.
Yeah, but I suppose you don't want to take too much of your safety net away, especially when you're first looking at removing things and reducing it down. I suppose the temptation is to go as small as you can right at the start, and that might not work. Anybody else? Cool. Thank you ever so much, guys. It's been a pleasure.